Hello, welcome back. Today we are talking about what might be the most rock and roll shape of all time, in my opinion, the Gibson Explorer. Gibson Explorers are super cool, a little bit different than a Les Paul, but also not completely off the beaten path of a Les Paul. I've always really liked white Explorers. You don't see white Explorers as much as you see black. Seems to be the color that most of them are, and then you see some red ones. But this specific guitar is a production model that Gibson's made for a couple of years now, the 70s Explorer. White being the main color. I think they've made it in black and maybe a natural as well. You'll see the bound fretboard on these as well. Gibson made a white Explorer in the 2000s and earlier. I owned one at one point. I think it was a 2008 unbound fretboard, but ebony fretboard, which was pretty cool. This is just rosewood, but it's a pretty dark piece of rosewood, and it looks really good. I'm really picky about things like that. When it comes to being a white guitar, if there's too much brown to the fretboard, it really clashes in a weird way that I just don't dig. But this looks good, so I don't have anything to complain about. I've done a little bit of tweaking to this guitar. If you look up here, it looks like I've swapped the tuners. These are actually the stock tuners. I just bought some different buttons, some different tabs to put on the tuners themselves. I actually, when I first bought this guitar, had Klusons put on it and took the Klusons back off to put the Grovers back on. When I had my guy put Klusons on it, he told me, you're going to have the Grovers put back on. You're not going to like them. I actually didn't think, it's tuners, how could it really affect how the guitar plays? But there was a little bit of like a plinkiness that came with the Klusons because they're a lighter tuner. So I do have, if we look at the back here of the headstock, I do have some screw holes from where the Klusons were screwed in. I feel like I need to kind of seal that up a little bit for the sole reason you're not going to be able to tell in this vantage, in this perspective. I'll try to get some close-ups of it. This guitar is actually, it came from the demo shop, the mod shop. It's got checking all over it. It's pretty cool. Maybe I can get it where you can see on the back. It's pretty noticeable on the back here. So these lines in the finish, checking. Also a unfortunate mishap that a tech had when I decided to take my guitar to them. But it's got checking on the front. It's got checking all the way up to the headstock on the back. Came from the Gibson factory like that. I actually, I traded a guy an SG and some money off of Facebook Marketplace for this guitar. And I didn't know a ton about it. I just knew it was a new-ish Gibson Explorer. I knew it was the 70s because it's white and it's got the binding on the fretboard. And when I got it home, I got on Reverb just like, what are these selling for? You know, that kind of thing. I already knew what they were selling for, but I was doing some research and found that this guitar, the serial number that I have, had been sold on Reverb from Gibson 4 days earlier. So the guy, he lived a town over at the time and flipped a lot of guitars. I'm guessing he just saw it on Gibson's Reverb, thought it'd be a good flip. I'm fine with it because this guitar is really cool and I've bonded with this guitar quite a bit in the couple years I've owned it. else have I done? So I mentioned the tuners were back to the stock Grovers, just with different buttons on them. I've swapped the pickups. We've got Seymour Duncan Saturday Night Specials. I actually had these in a Explorer that I had, the white Explorer I mentioned, that I had years ago, and just decided, hey, I want something Alnico 4. I felt like that's what I wanted, so Seymour Duncan's easy enough to come by. And I've swapped out the knobs. These are just reflector knobs, white. I thought it looked cool. Might go back to the black at some point. You know, it's like changing your outfit. I feel like this shirt today. I feel like changing the knobs today. Bridge and tailpiece are stock. I actually, when I first got this guitar, I had a Callahan bridge and tailpiece that I tried on this guitar, and I liked the aluminum, which is stock, better. Still got the stock nut on it with the finish on the sides. It's a cool guitar. I've always really dug white Explorers. When I bought this guitar, I went down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out, where did I see a white Explorer when I was younger that it stuck with me so bad. And I came to a couple potential ahas, a couple like, oh, this person played one, this person played one. One of the obvious ones is James Hetfield. Although I hadn't seen a ton of Metallica like live videos. There's the one video where he's got the ESP. It could have been Metallica a little bit. Airborne came to mind. There was the video for Runnin' Wild. I remember seeing that and thinking, like, oh, Explorer, cool guitar. Coheed and Cambria, I think it was the video for Welcome Home. Claudio was playing a white Explorer. And then I came to perhaps the funniest realization, but maybe the realest one as far as what made me want a white Explorer. Guitar Hero. I think it was Guitar Hero 2. If you got it for the Xbox 360, you got a white Explorer for the controller. I didn't have an Xbox 360 at the time. I had PlayStation, so I had a red SG controller. And I remember thinking, like, oh man, the Explorer looks so much cooler. And I think there was a white Explorer in the game as well. Which Guitar Hero is where I got started. Like, I played Guitar Hero first and then decided, oh, I want to play the real guitar. I think a lot of people my age, that seems to be the story of. Everything you're hearing today is in D standard. Got 11 to 49 NYXLs on here. I really like NYXLs on a Gibson type guitar. So anything set neck, 24 3/4, I'm going to have NYXLs on it. They're a little bit brighter. I just like what they do on a Gibson. reps. Just playing this today, hearing it through the amp. By the way, Morgan MVP 23. That's what you're hearing everything through. I've got it mic'd up with a 57 and a 421. Focusing on dirty sounds with this. I mean, it sounds decent clean, but this guitar is a rock and roll machine. I'm not grabbing this because I want to play some intricate, clean chords. I'm grabbing it because I want to play a riff with distortion. And it does that. It does that well. So there's something comfortable about Explorers. They're not super heavy. You can get a heavy Explorer just like you can get a light Les Paul. But they're not super heavy. And to me, there's something about, it's almost like a place to rest my arm. Something about wrapping my arm around it. It just feels right. I don't know how to put it. It's obnoxious. I mean, this amount of, you got like over a foot of wood just protruding out this way. Makes the case huge. I'll show you the case here in a second. I remember my first Explorer that I got that came with the case, seeing the case and like, man, I feel like I just want to make a coffee table out of it. It's that big. But it's rock and roll. And I think of pointy guitars and I think of metal. I think of modern guitars because that's typically what people who are playing metal, they're playing more modern guitars. The Explorer is almost as old as the Telecaster or the Les Paul. The Telecaster and the Les Paul came out in the early 50s. This came out in the late 50s. This design, 1958, 1957, 1959 in there. Late 50s, this guitar came out. They were very rare at that point. And they were futuristic. So when the Explorer came out, there were 3 designs that were these futuristic designs that Gibson was making. There's the Explorer, the Flying V, and the Futura, which the Futura is very similar to the Explorer. But they were these modern things. I don't think people got it then. But then the 80s came around, the 70s came around. You had people like Lynyrd Skynyrd. One of them played an Explorer. James Hetfield in the 80s, people started carrying the torch of these super cool guitars into rock music. And it's never really gone away. It's never been at the same level as a Les Paul. You can go into any guitar store and you're going to find a Les Paul of some sort. That's not as common, the Explorer. But throughout the decades, there's been Explorer players. I mentioned Claudio Sanchez of Coheed and Cambria. He's been playing them for a while. Metallica. Who else? There's a bunch of names, big and small, people playing Explorers. It's just a rock and roll machine. I don't know what else you want me to tell you. They feel cool. That's the biggest thing. If you think, I don't know, I like Les Pauls, whatever, try playing an Explorer. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But to me, there's something just right about an Explorer. I want to thank Perennial Sound Studio, as always, for letting me come in and shoot this video. Great place to take vocal lessons, record music, take guitar lessons, bass lessons, piano lessons, all sorts of stuff. I'm going to put a link below. If you're interested in any of that, reach out. Perennial Sound Studios here in Champaign, Illinois. Great place. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, if you feel like it, subscribe down below. It helps me out trying to monetize the channel if that's something you want to do. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.